Mali, a 28-year-old woman of breathtaking beauty, had always dreamt of becoming a reverend sister. She was the only child of her beloved parents, who showered her with love and care. But life has a way of rewriting even the most innocent dreams. When Mali was just 15, a fateful night changed the course of her life forever. The night was calm, the air heavy with the scent of rain, as Mali and her parents prepared for bed. Suddenly, the peace was shattered by the crashing of their front door. Armed robbers, masked and menacing, stormed into their home, their guns gleaming in the dim light. "Bring out the money, or we'll kill you all," one of them barked, his voice thunderous with rage. Her parents trembled in fear, their faces pale. Mali watched in terror as her father was dragged to the bedroom at gunpoint to retrieve their savings. Her mother, on the floor beside her, clutched her trembling hands, whispering desperate prayers. When the robbers got the money, they didn't leave. Instead, their leader's eyes fell on Mali. "This one is ripe," he sneered. Her blood turned to ice. They took turns violating her, their laughter mixing with her screams. Her parents, bound and helpless, tried to stop them, but the robbers shot them in cold blood. The lifeless bodies of her mother and father lay in a pool of blood as Mali's innocence was stolen. By the time the robbers left, Mali was not only an orphan but also scarred in ways that words could never express. The next few days after the tragedy were a blur of pain and confusion. Her parents' relatives descended on the house like vultures, not to console her or honor the memories of the deceased, but to strip the home of its valuables. They argued loudly over furniture, appliances, and even family heirlooms, their greed filling the once peaceful home with chaos. Mali, still numb with grief, watched helplessly as the life she had known was dismantled piece by piece. They divided the property amongst themselves with cold efficiency, leaving Mali with nothing but the clothes on her back. No one offered her a kind word, let alone a home. She was an orphan now, a young girl thrust into a cruel and indifferent world. The education her parents had worked so hard to provide was abruptly cut short, and her dreams of becoming a reverend sister seemed to drift further out of reach. Forced to fend for herself, Mali turned to menial jobs to survive. She scrubbed floors, washed clothes for strangers, and sold food on the streets, enduring long hours under the scorching sun. Her hands, once soft and youthful, became rough and calloused. Nights were spent sleeping in cramped, unsafe spaces, her stomach often empty and her heart heavy with despair. Yet, even in her darkest moments, the flame of her dream to become a reverend sister burned fiercely within her. By the time she turned 18, Mali had managed to find a semblance of stability by living with a distant aunt. However, this arrangement brought little solace. Her aunt, a bitter and resentful woman, treated Mali as an unwanted burden. She was made to cook, clean and run errands, often enduring harsh words and cold indifference. The struggle became unbearable, the weight of her circumstances pressing down on her like an unrelenting storm. Desperation eventually pushed Mali into a life she had never imagined for herself. To make ends meet, she began seeking out wealthy men who would pay for her company. Each encounter left her feeling hollow and ashamed, but she saw no other way to survive. Every night as she returned to her small lonely room, she would weep bitterly, hating the person she was becoming, but unable to find another path. Despite her struggles, Mali never let go of her faith. By day, she clung fiercely to her belief in God, attending church services without fail. She prayed and fasted regularly, pouring her heart into every plea for forgiveness. The Bible became her refuge, its pages stained with tears as she sought solace and guidance. "Lord, deliver me," she would whisper, her voice trembling with desperation. "I don't want this life. Show me a way out." What made Mali remarkable was her enduring kindness and generosity, even in the face of her hardships. Despite her meager earnings, she often shared what little she had with those in need. She would buy food for hungry children on the streets and help elderly neighbors carry their burdens. Her compassion earned her the admiration of many, though few knew the depth of her personal pain. Mali's life became a paradox, a devout Christian trapped in a world of sin. Her unwavering faith and acts of kindness stood in stark contrast to the choices desperation had forced upon her. She was a young woman torn between her dreams and the harsh realities of survival, a soul searching for redemption in a world that seemed determined to crush her spirit. Through it all, Mali refused to let go of hope. She believed deep down that God had a plan for her, that one day she would rise above her circumstances and find her way to the life she had always dreamed of, even if the path seemed impossibly distant. At 25, Mali began to notice a deep, lingering fatigue that she couldn't shake off. She ignored it at first, brushing it aside as exhaustion from the constant hustle of her difficult life. But as the weeks passed, her body began to betray her further. Persistent headaches, sudden fevers, and an overwhelming weakness that made even small tasks feel like mountains to climb. Eventually, unable to bear it any longer, Mali gathered her courage and went to the hospital. Sitting across from the doctor in the sterile white room, she felt her heart pound as the tests were explained. When the doctor finally delivered the diagnosis, her world seemed to stop. She was HIV positive. The words echoed in her mind, each syllable cutting deeper into her soul. Mali sat frozen, staring blankly at the floor as the weight of the news sank in. Tears began streaming down her face, unchecked and relentless. Memories of her parents, the life they had envisioned for her, and her shattered dreams came rushing in like a tidal wave. The choices she had been forced to make, the compromises to survive, they all replayed in her mind. "Why me, God? Haven't I suffered enough?" she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her pain. After she was discharged, Mali didn't go home. Instead, she walked straight to the small church that had always been her refuge. It was quiet inside, the flicker of candles casting soft shadows on the worn walls. Mali dropped to her knees at the altar, her body trembling with uncontrollable sobs. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her hands together, lifting her voice in desperate prayer. "Lord, I have sinned. Forgive me," she cried, her words raw and pleading. "I don't know how I ended up here. I've lost my way. Help me, God. Show me a way out." Her voice echoed in the stillness of the empty church, mingling with the faint hum of a hymn playing in the background. She poured out her heart, confessing every mistake, every regret, and every moment of despair. Mali begged for a second chance, not just at life, but at rediscovering the person she had once dreamed of becoming. For hours, she knelt there, her cries filling the sacred space, a soul broken yet yearning for redemption. 2 months later, Mali made a brave choice that changed her life forever. She decided to leave her old ways behind and become an evangelist. She traveled from town to town, sharing her story with anyone who would listen. Standing before crowds, she spoke with honesty and deep emotion about her struggles, her pain, and the mistakes she had made. Her words were simple but powerful. I was lost, she would say, her almond-shaped eyes glistening with unshed tears. But God found me. His love lifted me out of the darkness. People listened, captivated by her story of pain turning into hope. Her messages were full of truth and faith, touching the hearts of those who needed it most. Mali didn't just preach, she acted. She started a non-profit organization for girls who were struggling like she once had. The organization gave them a safe place to live, an education to build their futures, and counseling to heal their hearts. Mali wanted every girl to know that they mattered, that their lives could be better. She worked tirelessly, her once fragile frame now filled with strength and purpose. People looked at her with admiration and love, inspired by her journey from despair to hope. Mali's life wasn't just a story, it became a light, guiding others out of the darkness and toward a brighter tomorrow. Despite the amount of admirers she had, not everyone was kind. Some whispered behind her back, reminding others of her past mistakes. They judged her harshly, their stares and cruel words cutting deep into her heart. At first, Mali tried to stay strong, pushing herself to focus on the good she was doing. She believed she could overcome the stigma, but the constant judgment weighed heavily on her. Every glance of disapproval, every whispered insult drained her strength a little more. Mali's heart broke under the pressure. No matter how much she gave, no matter how hard she worked to help others, the shadow of her past followed her everywhere. Slowly, her once strong frame began to weaken. She grew tired easily, her radiant smile becoming harder to maintain. The same community she had poured her soul into seemed to take pieces of her spirit away. One day, as she knelt to comfort a little girl clutching her hand, Mali felt her strength falter. Her body, already fragile from the burden she carried, could no longer bear the weight. She grew very sick, unable to move or speak as she once did. The people she had helped visited her, tears in their eyes, but the damage had already been done. The pain of being judged and misunderstood had drained her completely. Mali passed away in her small, quiet home, her once bright light extinguished too soon. The village mourned her deeply, realizing too late how much she had done for them, despite her own struggles. Children cried, elders bowed their heads in sorrow, and the whispers of her kindness began to overshadow the cruel words that had broken her. Mali's death left a hole in the hearts of many. People in the village wept openly, from the youngest child to the eldest elder. Her small home, once filled with her quiet strength and endless giving, became a place of silence. Yet her memory refused to fade. The girls Mali had saved, those she had sheltered, taught and encouraged, grew up carrying her lessons in their hearts. They went on to achieve great things. Some became teachers, others doctors, and a few started their own organizations to help those in need, just as Marley had done for them. They often spoke about her, their voices filled with gratitude and pride. Marley showed us how to believe in ourselves, they would say. She gave us hope when we had none. And so Marley, the woman once scorned as the Holy Prostitute, was remembered as a beacon of light. Her name became a symbol of hope, a reminder that no matter how broken a life may seem, it can be rebuilt with faith, love, and determination. She showed the world that even in pain, beauty can bloom. And even in sorrow, there is a chance for a brighter tomorrow. The end.